So I'm actually doing two Will Smith movies back to back right now. And this last Tuesday, I got around to seeing the new Bad Boys movie. So this would be number four in the series. It's been a full 18 months since I first binged the first three buddy cop movies with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence playing Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett. I already kind of knew what to expect coming into the movie. Much of the cast from Bad Boys for Life returns. It was especially nice to see Vanessa Hudgens again as Kelly, an ammo agent. The ammo agency was introduced in the last Bad Boys movie. And then Armando, Mike Lowry's son from that same movie, finally gets a chance to be one of the good guys fighting alongside with his dad. So during my Will Smith-a-thon in 2022, the Bad Boys films came last so far. I haven't seen all of Will's movies yet, but that was as far as I got at that point. I saw those movies at the end of 2022, and it initially started when I saw Michael Bay's latest movie that came out that same year, Ambulance. And in that movie, there are these two cops that are driving over to a bank that are referencing Bad Boys. We're gonna go in Bad Boys style. If uh, if you haven't seen that film, check that one out. That's easily got to be my favorite Michael Bay movie so far. So it was then and there that I realized, okay, I have got to stop putting off watching these films. I'm a Will Smith fan now. He's my number one favorite actor officially. And the Bad Boys movies have been his highest grossing movies in his entire career, or so I've been told. Maybe I Am Legend is up there too, and Independence Day, I guess. But the Bad Boys movies have always been the cream of the crop for Will Smith. And, aside from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, is what gave him his stamp in the film industry. Especially since the first one came out in 95 and he was just coming off of the heels of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air 2. Now, personally, I may not have had a taste for the buddy cop franchise, the whole genre at that time when I saw it. Although I did revisit the Lethal Weapon movies again like 3 months ago. But seeing Will Smith play out this kind of formula, I felt would still be fun to watch. It has to be. And yeah, sure enough, I watched the first one from 1995. It was fun, hot, sexy, full of classic Lowry Burnett moments where they're hassling each other. There's hilarious and quotable movie lines. Um, Tay Leone was a smoking hot female seeking justice for her friend's death type of character. And it made me see Skittles in a whole new different light. If you know which scene I'm talking about, I probably don't have to quote that scene. I'll probably provide the link below so that you can watch it. It's pretty priceless watching that scene. And to think this was Michael Bay's debut outing as a director. Next year, the movie hits its 30th anniversary. And he has also made a cameo in every movie too, including Ride or Die, where you see him in a Camaro. And it's when Martin Lawrence is doing like this Earth, Wind, and Fire style dance in the middle of busy traffic where, he's talking about some great epiphany that he had where he wants to love all things. And, Michael Bay is honking his horn, telling him, get the fuck out of the way. Yeah. So yeah, anyways, so that was the first one. Now, the second one in 2003, 8 years after the first one, it was fine. It was a bit overlong, and some of the comedy torps in that one were a bit cringy. I didn't care for the rat hunt. Oh my gosh. The rat humping scene. Oh my goodness. That and like the scene with the naked corpses falling out of the getaway truck when Mike and Marcus are chasing some villains. Uh, and like one has like his foot sticking out above the driver's side where Mike is driving. Yeah, nah, that's just too much. That's too much. It's oh my goodness. The comedy in that movie made the film seem more like a Wayans brother flick or Wayan brothers flick to me. Yeah. The climatic chase scene in Cuba, however, was exciting to watch. That alone actually makes it rewatchable for that reason. And also, Gabrielle Union was pretty hot too. Interestingly, she got her own TV show in 2019 alongside Jessica Alba. The show is called LA's Finest, which was a female led version of the Bad Boys franchise. I would basically dub that show Bad Girls. Um, you can find that show on Spectrum if you're interested in watching that. And then there's Bad Boys for Life, the third film in the franchise, which came out a full 17 years after the second one. This is right at the beginning of 2020. Yeah. And that movie was intended to psychologize both Mike and Marcus by delving deep into the souls of each character. So there was a backstory that Mike was involved with a bruja, if I'm even saying that right. Bruja, it's a Spanish, Mexican term for witch. And Mike got romantically involved with her while he was on an undercover mission. And before he met Marcus and became partners of the badge, he had a son with this woman. Her name was Isabella, who he never saw until he grew up. And his name is Armando. And Armando was actually brainwashed by Isabella, whom Mike had to put in jail because of her intense, violent, and ruthless nature, and also because she was a witch. She would also chant these incantations from Santa Morez, who is the uh, South American Mexican god or goddess of death. She's like this vigilante goddess who takes care of those who live on the fringes. So it's pretty easy to see why a villainess would look up to Santa Morez as her higher power to look up to whenever she needed to escape out of a situation in which she was trapped or whenever she felt like her life was in danger. And she felt that she was protecting Armando this whole time. But because Armando was being used as a vigilante for his mom, and at one point actually nearly kills Mike, not even realizing until much later that Mike had to get through to him and reach into his soul and reveal Armando's humanity, make him realize, oh my gosh, I've been gaslighted the whole time. I've been, betraying my own father. And Isabel really, really gets her comeuppance in that film. And now it's 4 years later, and we have Bad Boys Ride or Die. Armando is a good guy. Well, okay, except it doesn't start off that clean cut at first. He's still perceived by much of the police force as a stone cold killer, and Mike has to defend his honor. Armando remains reserved and protective of himself too for at least the first half of the movie. But the catalyst for Bad Boys 4 is Joe Pantoliano's Captain Conrad Howard, the captain with the short fuse, who's always yelling at Mike and Marcus for their reckless behavior. Don't fuck this up was always like his famous line in every movie that he's been in, because he's been with the franchise since the beginning. And it turns out now that the tables have turned in this recent entry with Captain Howard when he was assassinated in the previous film. And now the story setup here is that the captain was involved in some dirty cartel drug dealings prior to his sudden death. Yeah, he was assassinated in the last movie. And, to make matters complicated, Mike and Marcus are charged with murder as well at one point, which spurs a manhunt for the two as well as Armando. Well, I totally didn't expect the emotional stakes to be this high, but I figured there had to be a change in the franchise to keep things fresh and new. I mean, it's not like Mike and Marcus were always perceived as like these perfect heroes in the first place. I mean, after all, it's like Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh in the Lethal Weapon franchise, had their own fair share of flack from their own captain in that movie. Yeah. Now, here's the thing about the Bad Boys franchise. So while the newest, okay, so I'm gonna make a comparison to the newest MonsterVerse movie, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, which I saw a couple of months earlier. Now that movie impressed me because it took the franchise to different heights. 10 years after that franchise started. But while the MonsterVerse franchise has continued to one up the last one, the Bad Boys franchise is one that's remained pretty neutral the whole time, even if the characters have gone through changes. Pretty much these movies give me more of the same thing. And hey, that's fine. That is totally fine. That's the whole point of these movies altogether. They're supposed to be mindless fun. They're simply meant to, be full of explosions, sexy bikini clad girls glistening in the sunlight, and Mike and Marcus just being Mike and Marcus. In fact, I've noticed one common thread throughout all the Bad Boys movies. There is usually a nameless woman or even a couple of women who appear for a few seconds simply for the purpose of eye candy. And you know that danger doesn't lurk far behind that eye candy. Those women are basically meant to deceive you into thinking that you're going to be watching a skin parade, like Into the Blue. But really, they simply juxtapose between the lush scenery and the action or violence going on. Well, okay, Into the Blue was an action film as well, but even that the action in that movie was tame compared to the Bad Boys movies. Okay, so the first Bad Boys movie didn't have a nameless girl. The scene towards the beginning where Mike stops the car and starts yelling at Marcus after spilling his burger all over his seat. There is a car that stops behind them, and a tall girl with a white miniskirt steps out and walks around the front of the two guys. That's Lisa Boyle, a Chicago actress who also popped up in the John Travolta Nicolas Cage movie Face Off. And if you look on IMDb, Lisa Boyle as billed is billed as girl decoy for the first Bad Boys movie. And she really lives up to that title because soon after, a bunch of evil gangsters step out of that same vehicle that she got out of. They get behind Mike and Marcus, and then all violence, starts to break out. All sorts of mayhem starts to become unleashed. Now, the second movie, during the early scenes in Cuba, features a girl walking commando, no panties under her skirt, to a concession stand to buy like a burrito or an ice cream. That was obviously a little bit more innocent. In Bad Boys for Life, two girls trot across the street while Mike and Marcus stop at an intersection, and Marcus tries tempting Mike to check out those two bikini girls who are not making eye contact, but just laughing and minding their own business, just Florida girls. This was Marcus's way of trying to persuade Mike to think about finding a girl who he can marry, since Mike remains single even after 25 years at that point, after the first one. Or so we think. Whereas, of course, Marcus has always been more of the family man, always more conservative, more serious, more rigid. And he really, really loosens up now in Ride or Die. And then, of course, in Ride or Die, there are a couple of dislocated scenes of bikini girls running along the Florida beach and playing volleyball. Nothing directly connected to the plot, though, just background scenes that were played during the opening credits of the film. So yeah, I mean, th pretty much all four of these movies are roughly cut from the same cloth. It's like they don't really stand out on their own, and they always have the same theme song. Da 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 da. However, I will give special praise to Bad Boys 3 and 4 in terms of the atmosphere and the slow-paced moodiness, especially in the fourth one, because there are some dream scenes where, like, the spirit of Captain Howard comes to visit Mike and Marcus. So these movies are more sober and more somber and more full of contemplative wonder than the first two, which were more fast-paced, in-your-face action, which figures because Michael Bay directed the first two movies. We obviously can't forget about that. And um, Abid and Adil, I believe that's their names. Sorry, I didn't include that here. Um, it's Adil and Bilal, a couple of Belgian directors who are roughly around my age. They were the ones who directed the two most recent Bad Boys movies. So that explains, why the difference in style and tone from Michael Bay's more dirtier and grittier earlier movies from 95 to 2003. Yeah. So there is novelty in the two latest Bad Boys movies, which I can appreciate. It's also nice to have a plot in the fourth one now where Mike Lowry gets married. Mike, throughout the franchise has always been the ladies' man, the stud, the player. And now he finally gets to settle down. He's basically the Mel Gibson, Martin Riggs to Marcus's Roger Murtaugh, Danny Glover family man. Captain Howard's daughter and granddaughter are also introduced in the fourth movie, which also helped to expand the character family tree a bit in the franchise. Callie is the granddaughter, played by Quinn Hemphill, which I think makes this her first major starring role. She really carries some of the same attitude that Joe's character did really well, reciting ad verbatim at Mike's wedding. Don't fuck this up. Yeah, just classic. And then there's Judy, who plays the captain's daughter and Callie's mother. She really has a grudge against Armando, since he was responsible for the captain's death, or so we think. Actually, yeah, I think, yeah, he was, I believe, responsible for the captain's death. I just watched those three movies again recently in preparation for this. Um, and it takes a while for, for her to find it in her to forgive Armando when he realizes that he's a changed man. When, you see him saving, protecting and saving Callie from a bunch of bad guys towards the climax of the movie. But it is Callie, however, who gets caught in the middle of what is a vendetta against the late captain. Her and Mike's wife, Christine, played by Melanie Liburd, who happens to star in the Sam Levinson TV show The Idol, which I happen to be currently watching as well. And yeah, so I guess getting into the story now, finally, I realize this is a very, very, very long introduction, but there's really not much to say except that the story regards a former U.S. Army Ranger named James McGrath who was tortured by the cartel. Some deal that went down during an undercover assignment, I guess, that went wrong. But he's the one who framed Captain Howard and eventually frames Mike and Marcus as well. And now this is when Vanessa Hudgens comes in as Kelly, the weapons expert of ammo. She returns along with Alexander Ludwig as Dorn, and they're both dating in this movie. Yeah, there's lots of love in the air with this movie. It's like you see Mike getting married, and now you see, two ammo agents that are in a relationship and living together. Yeah, but anyhow, they both reveal McGrath is the perpetrator and was the one responsible for the captain's death. Okay, so a word about Vanessa Hudgens here. Ever since I saw her in Sucker Punch as Blondie, I just knew that she would be perfect playing a ammo officer that kicks ass a lot. She just brings such a diva role to her part in the Bad Boys movies. I don't know why she doesn't have a microphone in her hand every time she kills somebody. But yeah, she's great. She's great. I've found myself accidentally picking up a lot of her movies without the intention of her being the focal point. But turns out she's a great actress. I really love her. And I've never listened to any of her music. Well, okay, Band Slam, I guess, counts, but I've never seen the High School Musical movies. Anyways, I just had to say it, you know, share that little tidbit about Vanessa. So yeah, the final showdown is at an abandoned alligator-themed amusement park with a 300-pound albino alligator. Yeah, that was a very impressive final act. I definitely enjoyed that. And like I said, it was really nice to see Armando finally showing that he really does care um, about the captain's granddaughter. Just that whole knife fight that's going on in that scene and just the way that he protects her. It is a very, very tender-hearted moment, I must say. I really do. Well, in fact, Will Smith goes through some trials of his own. He has some panic attacks at a couple of times in the movie. So he's definitely not the sharpshooter that he used to be. And I think a lot of that is because he still carries the trauma of having lost the captain. I mean, it's like when he tries to save his wife who's being held hostage by James McGrath. He hesitates, but but eventually Marcus has to slap him, tell him, "Come on, don't get soft on me. You're a bad boy. You're a bad boy." Yeah. It is also really fun, by the way, to see Reggie break out of his reserved, quiet act for a change too. Reggie would be the son-in-law of Marcus, who was introduced in the second movie. There's actually a lot of flashbacks to the second movie as well. The whole plot with the Haitian drug lords, I guess, was also indirectly involved somehow with the captain. Now, as you notice, I kind of skimmed over the story here, and that's because honestly, as serious as this movie suggests it should be, it really only works if you take the comedy along with the drama. These movies were always intended to be buddy cop films first. Lethal Weapon, Rush Hour, Die Hard, those types of movies. And most of those franchises came out long before Bad Boys did. No, I'm sorry. Rush Hour, actually, the first Rush Hour movie came out 3 years after the first Bad Boys movie. And with these types of buddy cop films, there's plenty of laughs to go along with the film. Take the shootout scene, for example, at the dance club, where one of the gunmen shoots the candy globe and all these jelly beans start pouring out. Yeah, okay, so Marcus was advised by his doctor to stay away from sweets or anything that's high in sugar. But he can't help himself and he sticks his tongue out only to catch a black licorice jelly bean and then spits it out again. I can't blame him either. I can't blame him. I definitely don't like black licorice for sure. And even the opening scene after the credits where they have to stop at a gas station because Marcus is having stomach pains and Mike specifically tells him that he is only supposed to get a Mountain Dew, I think it is, or I think it was a ginger ale. But then he goes into the gas station and he also, looks at the hot dog stand and he realizes he's got to get one of those too. And then, of course, Mike comes in and has to tell him, talk some sense into him. There's also a shootout scene going on in that movie, in that scene as well, too. But conversely, Mike also gets an earful of Marcus at the wedding reception when Marcus goes kitchen sinking him during his speech. He's telling Mike about all the shit that they had to go through on their last adventure, accusing him of fucking a bruja and giving birth to a warlock baby. All sorts of insults are just thrown at him when, this is Mike's wedding and he should simply be enjoying himself in the company of Christine. Yeah, what can I say? Even in their 50s, both Will and Martin are still a couple of kids with toys. But yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed this movie. It really isn't that different from the first three entries that came before. But it was satisfying to see a lot of loose ends tied up from the previous film, and it ends exactly where it should be. Meaning that this is easily going to be the last Bad Boys movie in the franchise. The franchise has been going on for 29 years. That's a year longer than the Mission Impossible movies so far. There's an eighth one that's due to come out next year, so it's going to be even. Um, Now, while I enjoyed Will's more serious films, it is nice every so often to see him in comedy mode again. Now, he can switch back and forth like a chameleon, and it's just so effortless. Thanks, of course, to his Gemini ascendant. Oh, yeah. Yep. And so, yep, that that is my review for today. Definitely worth watching this movie on the big screen. I definitely would encourage you to see this, and I would encourage you to see the other Bad Boys movies too. I think they are great. So, yeah, that's my review. And thank you for supporting my channel, fellow reelers. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And yeah, I will see you on the next reel. Oh, by the way, also, as always, I want to give a shout out to Mega Media Exchange in Brookfield here, because without this business, my channel wouldn't exist in the first place. And so, yeah, that's it. I will see you on the flip side of the reel.